It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Well, today I'm bringing David Gibbons on, and David Gibbons is the Director of Business Communications for RT Media, but he does have a new title because RT Media was purchased by a company called ComExposium, and ComExposium is the 5th largest exposition company in the world, and David Gibbons is the foremost leader, understands the space about imaging supplies. He puts on the largest show globally in Zhuhai, China every year. It's called the RE/MAX Summit. I've had the pleasure to speak at that twice in person and this last year virtually. David, how are you doing? It's great to have you on the end of the day with Ray.
Thanks for the opportunity, Ray. It's always good to catch up, and this time I'm a guest on your program, so thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate having you. You know, David, I got to be honest with you. As this pandemic started to take off, back in, March time frame of last year, we heard some of the lawsuits that were going on in the European market where HP was kind of pushing some kind of firmware or something and wouldn't let people use, alternative supplies. And then here I am, I'm on your blog, and Tricia Judge, she's the executive director for ITC, Imaging Technology Council. She's the lawyer that's really kind of helps. Actually, she's brought some stuff to the Supreme Court and won around this space. But, I'm reading this article where they're kind of doing it again. So my question is HP going to, continue to try to control 100% of the supplies that go into printers? Or are they ever just going to let, 25 or 30% of the users buy alternative products? What's going on with HP?
Well, we don't know. And, I'd like to ask you what's going on with HP, with Xerox and everything else. I'm not sure if the board there is really switched on and thinking about their consumer. They're very concerned about their shareholders, of course. But, as you know, Ray, they use a razor and blade model for printers and cartridges. So the money, the revenue, the profits, all are all there related to the printer cartridges. So they're wanting to sell a $100, $200 printer cartridge and make their money on that. They certainly don't make the money on the printing devices. So in a market where, the volumes are declining, and particularly with this pandemic, they've declined even further. People are working from home, they're not using printers to the same extent in the office that they were. Then they're saying, well, how can we grow our market share? Oh, over there, the aftermarket has 10% of the colour market and up to 30% of monochrome. Let's go and claw that market back again.
Well,
they send these little, firmware updates down online, and consumers aren't even aware of what's happening, and it updates the technology with the printer and the cartridge talking to each other, and there's all sorts of malware and all sorts of concerns as to why they should be updating the firmware. But at the same time, they're locking out a third-party cartridge from being used in that printing device.
Well, you know what? Here's something I want to ask you. At the same time, they talk about how they're the green company. Send back your cartridges. So, maybe I need to get an expert that understands this piece, but are they actually remanufacturing their own cartridges, or are they just throwing them in a landfill somewhere and calling themselves the green company? That could be a whole other episode.
There are a number of companies that are taking the empty cartridges, even the ones that are shipped back to HP, and they are, they're regenerating those. They're making those into all sorts of other plastic products and whatever. Some toners are able to be used as a resin in a tar or a bitumen. Lexmark did that really well in their own parking lot, but HP is recycling, but not in the sense of reusing the product back as a printer cartridge again.
Well, it just seems to me that it's never changed. The amount of non-OEM toner has really never changed over the years. Black and white, it's been between 25 and 30%. Color, it's around 10. And it's just let people buy what they want. I can't imagine if I buy a Ford and I have to go to the Ford gas station, that's the only place I can get my fuel, I probably wouldn't be buying a damn Ford. And the other thing that's frustrating, if you're a consumer is, I don't hear of lawsuits against any other manufacturer by the consumer. I hear about sometimes where manufacturers are filing a lawsuit against maybe someone that's infringing on their patents, which, if you're infringing on patents, you should be sued. But you don't hear about end users suing Ricoh because they put, Kate and toner bottles in the copy machine. And and I don't understand why HP doesn't just figure out that we got to live in this world, and how do you build a business model where you're constantly being sued? Is this going to be going on forever or what?
Well, it's an interesting point, and the analogy that you use with the motor vehicle, if you buy a Ford motor vehicle, you have to go to Ford Gas to fill it up, and Ford Gas is typically 50% or maybe even more expensive than the other gas station across the road, which is an independent gas station. And the gas in the independent gas station across the road is guaranteed to be, work just as well. Then why wouldn't you want to be able to go and use that? Now, some people like to use the replacement parts on a vehicle that are the genuine brand,
Sure.
and all the rest of it. And, that's 80% of the market. They like to use the branded parts and all the rest of it. But what happened to choice? What happened to the ability to be able to, do what you want to be able to do with, with the device? Now that I bought it, I want to use it the way I want to use it.
Well, especially when the Supreme Court's already ruled on it. There's nothing wrong with these cartridges. They're not illegal cartridges. And it's just like, I think about my friends at Clover who, can help a dealer with print management by lowering some costs when they're taking over HP equipment. And, then you got HP running around, trying to put people in these crazy contracts. And it's just a warning sign. And I don't know if a lot of my friends at the Document Imaging channel pay attention to the RT Media publication. I mean, you guys have, 37,000 subscribers. That thing's written in 5 languages, international languages. I did a count the other day, and you published about 60 of my articles in your magazine, so thanks a lot for that. And, sometimes I'll Google my name and I'll see it in a foreign language, so it's kind of cool, the story, and then, of course, my name's there. But how's it going with the Com Expo? What's going to be different for RT Media? What are your plans now that you've merged with this other company?
Well, Comexposium, Ray, is the 5th largest exhibition company in the world, and they have about 300 different shows. They don't call those shows Comexposium, that's the parent company. But these shows are all across the world, particularly in Europe, in Western Europe, but also in the USA, and they're expanding now into Asia. And they saw our show and said, well, this is something that we have to have. And so they've come on board, and in the last 2 years, there's been an acquisition process, and they are now our new owners of the RT brand. But RT, which used to stand for Recycling Times, but it's not just about recycling anymore. There's all sorts of other imaging products as well that are available. So, we've changed from Recycling Times to RT Imaging World. So it is all about that. So there's not going to be a whole lot of change. We're going to still run the biggest show for the imaging supplies and printers in the world, right here in Zhuhai in October each year. This last year, Ray, we only had a really small show. We only managed to get 5,000 domestic people along because we couldn't get all the international people that visit, like yourself. Although you were there, because we had you there virtually on the screen talking to people about what's the new disruptions that are ahead, and you seem to know what's going on there.
Well, we love to disrupt people. Sometimes we got to disrupt thinking. I think we ought to get with Comexposium and see if we can't put on a show in the United States where we bring in all the manufacturers, so that these dealers don't have to go to all these individual meetings and have a conversation hijacked by the OEM. I think it's time that the dealers take back charge from the OEMs in a declining marketplace. Wouldn't it be great if you could walk over and you talk to the Konica folks, then you go over to the Ricoh folks, and you're in a better position of power. And that's kind of what I liked about the Zhuhai, summit. It's phenomenal. It's like 5 football fields big. You got everybody in there, that's in the industry is at this event. You have every single supplier at this event, and those buyers have so many choices to align with what they want to deliver to the market instead of being, kind of crippled by 1 or 2 OEMs. So, but I wanted to bring you on because I want to make sure my friends in the Imaging Channel, those dealers, kind of know there's another place that they can read about the channel in a different way. We're not going to see, talking about lawsuits in some of the industry's magazines, that's for sure, around HP. But it is real. It seems like they're in these things every other month. And like I said, I don't know one other OEM that's being sued by the end users. Or the end users are suing the OEM about toner.
Yeah, well, it happens occasionally. Epson has had a case like that too, but it surrounds the fact that the consumer basically doesn't get what they expected at the point of sale, and the OEMs have to be very careful. And HP has been, has taken all the limelight this year in that regard. They have been, in my words, despicable. In that at a time of a pandemic, suddenly people's printers stop working, and they've got to leave their home to go and find a genuine cartridge to get that printer working again. And in the midst of lockdowns and all the rest of it, you can only imagine the anxiety and the stress that has placed on people. I've had people, Ray, countless scores of people contact me and say, "I'll never buy an HP printer again. Not after this. I'll go and get an Epson, or I'll go and get a Brother, or a whatever. I'll go and get a different printer, so that I had choice again."
Well, I think it's important to be clear that, businesses have to make a profit and they have to make money. But in all reality, I go back to this, since printers were born, there's been alternative supplies for those printers. It's never exceeded 30% or 10% in the color world. Why can't we just leave it alone and let people be happy? It's just insanity to me. I don't know the customer service logic when your customers are suing you. I did a satire on it. I said they're going to have to build a help desk for customers to call for legal advice around their printer. And it's just pure insanity. We just want to get a print when we need it until we don't need to print anymore. David, is there anything you want to add before we end? And I want to have you back on again.
Yeah, well, it's, I just want to wish you all the best for the year, Ray. It's going to be interesting to see what Xerox is up to this year. They made a bid for HP last year, and that didn't work out, probably because of COVID-19. But I don't know if you're aware of it, but Xerox now are buying all their supplies from China through Nine Star, and able to fulfill their MPS contracts using alternative supplies. So I don't know how HP might be viewing that, but it's certainly a big issue. But Xerox has said, well, we trust these supplies, they don't infringe, there is quality, and we're going to use these supplies in our MPS program. So it's going to be interesting, I think, to see the war, particularly between the OEMs, stepping up as they continue to fight each other for market share as well.
Well, there has to be massive consolidation. I've done a few end of the day with Ray on it, so it'll be exciting to see how everything pans out. But one thing's for sure, David, it won't stay the way it is. And we all know this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and we'll see you all